Hi there, I thought I would tape a video on solving using square roots, and these are just some of the problems that we have done in class before, so I was just using these, but I thought it'd be really good to review before our quiz tomorrow. So the first problem that we have is b squared is equal to 0. Well, the first thing we talked about in class was to undo squaring something, I can take the square root. So I can rewrite this and give myself a little bit more room. So if I take the square root of this side, I also need to take the square root of this side. And you always need to remember that I need to take the positive or negative square root of whatever's on the other side. So if I take the square root of b squared, it's b, and then the square root of 0 is 0, and because there is no positive or negative, b is just equal to 0. Now, number 3 gets a little bit more complicated because I have a coefficient coefficient in front of the variable m squared. So before I go any further, I need to isolate that m squared. So I need to get rid of anything else that's around it. So to undo multiplication, I divide, and I divide by 36. And at this point, I have m squared is equal to 81 over 36. And I want to go ahead and I want to leave it as a fraction. And the reason I want to do that is because 81 is a perfect square and 36 is a perfect square. So to undo the m squared, I take the square root of it. And if I take the square root of that, I need to also take the square root of the other side. So going up here, I now have m, because the square root of m squared is m. And then I have positive or negative 9 over 6. Because the square root of 81 is 9 and the square root of 36 is 6. And so it's m is equal to plus or minus the square root of 3/2. So that is my final answer. Number 5, I kind of do the same thing. I want to isolate that m squared, so I divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. And so m squared is equal to negative 27. Now, I take the square root of both sides, square root of positive or negative square root of that side. So m is going to equal positive or negative the square root of negative 27. Now, this gets a little bit funky because I have a negative number. And if you plug this into your calculator, you cannot calculate what the negative square root of it. But we learned before break that the square root of negative 1 is I. So automatically, I can think of this as being m is equal to plus or minus negative 1 times, I didn't mean to do that, 27. Okay, so the square root of negative 1 is going to be I, plus or minus I, and I'm left with 27 underneath the radical. So I go over here to the side and I can break 27 into 9 and 3. And I know the square root of 9 is 3, so I have m is equal to plus or minus 3i. And what's left underneath is just that 3. So this would be my final answer. Gets a little bit more complicated when we have a quantity that's squared instead of just a number. So this isn't a quantity that's squared, so I need to undo anything else. So I need to undo multiplication, so I divide. And then I have x minus 1 squared is equal to negative 10. So in this case, I need to take the square root of both sides now, plus or minus, and so I have x minus 1 is equal to positive or negative square root of negative 10. Same thing applies. I have a negative 1 times 10, so I have x minus 1 is equal to positive or negative I times the square root of 10. Then this is where, because I have this quantity and I'm solving for x, this is the situation where I have to split it into two different equations. And my first equation looks like this, x minus 1 is equal to I square root of 10. And my second one looks like x minus 1 is equal to negative I square root of 10. So then I add 1, and it's x is equal to 1 plus I square root of 10. And so add 1, x is equal to 1 minus I square root of 10. Now in this case, I could write it like this, so x is equal to 1 plus or minus the I times the square root of 10. These two are exactly the same. This represents these two. Okay, so my answers are here, or either you can write it like this, either way. The last one we did today in class, and this is, we'll just call this number 15, and I might just have random numbers. So this is my quantity here, x minus 9 squared, that I want to isolate. And to do that, the first thing I need to do, I need to do the reverse order of operations, so reverse order of PEMDAS. So the reverse order would mean that I do addition and subtraction first. So instead of subtracting 7, I'm going to add 7. So I now have 4 times x minus 2 squared is equal to 196. My next step here is I get rid of multiplying by 4, so I divide by 4. So x minus 9, quantity squared, is equal to 49. Next step is to take the square root of both sides. So if x minus 9 is equal to plus or minus 7. So x minus 9 is equal to 7, and x minus 9 is equal to negative 7. So I add 9 to both sides, x is equal to 16, and then I add 9 to both sides, and x is equal to 2. So this would be my solution set. And that's how you solve using square roots.